For more than 7 centuries, Japan wasn't ruled by its emperors. It was ruled by warriors, men of discipline, loyalty, and iron will, known as shoguns. But how did that happen? How did a nation led by emperors for over 1,000 years become a military government? And what finally ended this era in 1867, bringing Japan into the modern world? Let's explore the fascinating story of how the shogunate began, how it worked, and how it eventually fell. A journey through war, power, and transformation that shaped Japan as we know it today.
Long before the age of the samurai, Japan was ruled by its emperors from the imperial capital, Kyoto. The emperor was considered a descendant of the sun goddess, Amaterasu, the divine heart of Japan. But as beautiful as that sounded, real political power wasn't always in imperial hands. By the 800s, during the Heian period, the court was elegant but weak. Powerful noble families like the Fujiwara clan started controlling politics behind the scenes. They married their daughters into the imperial family, influenced decisions, and basically ran the government while the emperor became more of a ceremonial figure. Outside Kyoto, the countryside was different. There, local warriors and landowners had to defend their territories from bandits and rebels. These were the early samurai, local protectors who fought for powerful families in exchange for land and status. Over time, these samurai became the backbone of Japan's military society. And when central control weakened, it was only a matter of time before these warriors took charge. In the late 1100s, Japan was torn by conflict between two great clans, the Taira and the Minamoto. Their struggle, known as the Genpei War, lasted 5 years and ended in 1185 when the Minamoto clan emerged victorious. The leader, Minamoto no Yoritomo, was not content to simply serve the emperor. He wanted to rule. In 1192, the emperor officially granted him the title of Seitai Shogun, or simply Shogun, meaning great general who subdues the barbarians. This marked the beginning of the Kamakura Shogunate, Japan's first military government. Its headquarters were not in Kyoto, but in Kamakura, far from the imperial court, symbolizing a new kind of rule. Under this system, the emperor still existed, but his role was purely symbolic. The real power rested with the shogun, who controlled the samurai, the land, and the people. The Kamakura government created a feudal network, a chain of loyalty between the shogun, regional lords, and samurai. Land was exchanged for service. Samurai swore loyalty to their lords, and lords pledged loyalty to the shogun. This system worked surprisingly well. It kept order, rewarded loyalty, and gave Japan a stable power structure. But stability never lasts forever. In the 1200s, Japan faced its greatest external threat, the Mongol Empire. Kublai Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, sent massive fleets to invade Japan in 1274 and 1281. The samurai fought bravely, but it was nature that saved them. 2 devastating typhoons destroyed the Mongol fleets. The Japanese called these storms kamikaze, or divine winds. However, victory came at a cost. Defending against the Mongols was expensive, and since the samurai gained no new land or spoils, many were left unpaid and unhappy. Resentment grew, and the shogunate weakened. Eventually, in 1333, an ambitious emperor named Go-Daigo tried to take back power from the shogun. His rebellion succeeded, for a short while. But one of his own generals, Ashikaga Takauji, turned against him, seized control, and created a new shogunate in Kyoto. And so began the Ashikaga, or Muromachi shogunate. At first, the Ashikaga shoguns tried to rule like their predecessors, balancing imperial prestige with military control, but they never had the same authority as the Kamakura government. The Ashikaga period was filled with civil wars and shifting alliances. Different families and regional warlords known as daimyo gained power in their territories. The shogunate could no longer fully control them. In the 1400s, Kyoto itself became a battlefield during the Onin War, 1467 to 1477. What started as a succession dispute turned into nationwide chaos. The Ashikaga shogunate lost all real control, and Japan descended into what's known as the Sengoku period, the Warring States era. For over a century, the country was divided among dozens of powerful daimyo, each fighting for survival and dominance. This was the true age of the samurai, an era of castles, betrayals, and endless battles. Names like Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu rose from this chaos. It was these men who would finally end the anarchy and build the most stable shogunate of them all. After more than a century of war, the decisive Battle of Sekigahara in 1600 changed Japan forever. The victor, Tokugawa Ieyasu, unified the country under his rule. 3 years later, in 1603, the emperor officially named him shogun. He set up his government in Edo, the city we now know as Tokyo. This was the start of the Tokugawa shogunate, also called the Edo period, an era of peace, order, and isolation that lasted more than 250 years. So how did it work? Tokugawa Ieyasu built a strict feudal hierarchy. At the top was the shogun, followed by the daimyo, the samurai, and below them the farmers, artisans, and merchants. Each class had its place, and movement between them was nearly impossible. It was a society built on discipline and control. To keep the daimyo loyal, the Tokugawa government created the sankin-kōtai system, a clever form of political control. Every daimyo had to spend alternating years in Edo and in their home domains, leaving their families behind in the capital as guests. This prevented rebellions and strengthened the shogun's influence. Trade and travel were tightly monitored, and foreign contact was mostly banned under the sakoku, or closed country, policy. Only the Dutch and the Chinese were allowed limited trade through the port of Nagasaki. Christianity was outlawed, and foreign missionaries were expelled. To the outside world, Japan seemed frozen in time. But inside it flourished. Edo became one of the largest cities in the world, filled with culture, art, and literature. Kabuki theater, haiku poetry, and ukiyo-e woodblock prints thrived. For over 2 centuries, Japan enjoyed an almost unmatched era of peace. But that peace came at a price. By the 1800s, the world had changed, and Japan was falling behind. While Europe and America industrialized, Japan remained isolated and largely agricultural. The rigid class system left little room for innovation or mobility. Samurai, who once ruled the battlefield, found themselves idle in an age of peace, dependent on government stipends. Corruption and financial problems spread. Famine struck in rural areas. Merchants, though officially the lowest class, became wealthy, while samurai often struggled to survive. The social order was cracking, even before the outside world knocked on Japan's door. And that knock came in 1853 from across the Pacific. In July 1853, Commodore Matthew Perry of the United States arrived in Edo Bay with a fleet of black steam-powered warships. The Japanese called them Kurofun, the Black Ships. Perry demanded that Japan open its ports to trade with the United States or face military consequences. The shogunate had no real choice. Their ancient weapons and strategies couldn't match Western firepower. In 1854, Japan signed the Treaty of Kanagawa, ending more than 2 centuries of isolation. But this decision shattered public trust in the shogunate. Many Japanese believed the shogun had failed to protect the nation's honor. Powerful domains, especially Satsuma and Choshu, began calling for the restoration of imperial rule under the slogan Sono Joi, meaning revere the emperor, expel the barbarians. Civil unrest grew. Samurai, who were once loyal to the shogun, now turned against him. The old system was collapsing. By the 1860s, the Tokugawa government was losing control rapidly. Foreign influence was growing, and internal rebellions were spreading. When Tokugawa Yoshinobu became shogun in 1866, he tried to modernize the government, introducing Western-style weapons, industry, and diplomacy. But it was too late. In 1867, he made a shocking decision. He resigned as shogun and returned governing authority to the emperor, hoping to preserve some influence under a new system. However, the emperor's supporters, especially from Satsuma and Choshu, wanted total control. Conflict broke out in 1868, known as the Boshin War. The shogunate's forces were defeated, and Edo was peacefully surrendered by negotiation thanks in part to the wise diplomacy of Katsu Kaishu. The victory marked the Meiji Restoration, the end of 700 years of samurai government, and the restoration of the emperor's authority. The emperor, now Emperor Meiji, moved the capital from Kyoto to Edo, renaming it as Tokyo, Eastern capital. Japan began to modernize at an astonishing pace, adopting Western technology, industry, and education. The samurai era had ended, but their spirit continued to shape Japan's identity. The shogunate was more than just a military government. It was the system that defined Japan for centuries. It taught discipline, loyalty, and social order, but also limited freedom and change. Each shogunate rose with strength and vision, but eventually fell to rigidity in time. From the sword of Minamoto no Yoritomo to the reforms of Tokugawa Ieyasu, and finally the surrender of Tokugawa Yoshinobu, the cycle of power repeated again and again. Yet, without those 700 years of samurai rule, Japan's modernization might never have been so rapid or so successful. The unity, discipline, and sense of identity built under the shoguns became the foundation for Japan's transformation into a world power. Today, when we look at Japan, a nation blending ancient tradition with cutting-edge modernity, we still see the shadow of the shogun. From the bowing etiquette of respect to the precision of craftsmanship, the echoes of the samurai spirit remain. We appreciate you watching. Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next story from history.